Welcome to Galactic Nova Stories, where cosmic emotions come to life. Your journey begins now. Her sisters turned against her, but a human smuggler took her in part. One Kira's antennae trembled as she felt the connection to her sisters weaken with each step she took away from the hive. The sensation wasn't painful, not physically, but the emotional void growing within her chest threatened to consume her from within. She had never been alone before. No Avani had. Until 6 rotations ago, she had been like any other drone in Hive Zalara, one of the 12 great colonies that spanned the azure plains of Theros. She had worked, eaten and slept in perfect harmony with her 10,000 sisters, their thoughts flowing through the collective consciousness as naturally as water through a stream. Then came the change. It had started with whispers at the edge of her mind, gaps where her sisters' thoughts should have been. By the 3rd day, the whispers had grown to a silence so profound that Kira had panicked, rushing to the communion chamber where the Hive elders monitored the collective. "Something is wrong," she had chittered, her forelimbs gesturing in distress. "I cannot hear my sisters clearly." The elders' multifaceted eyes had regarded her coldly. "Nothing is wrong with the collective, Unit 7315. The defect is within you." Those words had been her death sentence. Among the Avani, individuality was aberration. Aberration meant recycling. Her body would be processed into nutrient paste to feed the next generation of larvae. Now she fled, through the twilight forests beyond the hive's territory, her forelegs carrying her faster than she had ever moved. The crimson leaves of the canopy filtered the light of twin moons, casting dappled shadows that helped conceal her emerald carapace. Kira had stolen food, water, and a thermal cloak from the communal stores. Her first independent decision, her first crime. The satchel bounced against her thorax as she ran, each impact a reminder of her treachery. "Tracker units deployed, Queen Mother," came the faint echo through what remained of her connection. "The aberrant will be recovered before dawn." Kira fought back waves of instinctual guilt. Her entire existence had been programmed for the good of the hive. Every Avani knew their place from the moment of hatching, their purpose encoded in both genetics and the subtle chemical signals that permeated the colony's wax-lined tunnels. But Kira's mutation, this blessed curse, had given her something no Avani was meant to possess: choice. The trees thinned as she approached the edge of the forest. Beyond lay the starport, a neutral zone where off-worlders traded with the united Avani hives. If she could reach it, perhaps she could find passage, away from Theros. A pulse of collective anger surged through her fading link. They had discovered her absence sooner than expected. The Queen herself was directing the search now. All units converge on the southern forest perimeter. The aberrant is attempting to reach the starport. Kira emerged from the tree line and beheld the sprawling lights of the port for the first time with her own eyes, not through the shared vision of worker units assigned to trade duty. Ships of various configurations sat on landing pads, angular, bulbous, some graceful, others utilitarian. Beings of species she had only glimpsed through the collective moved between them. Her antennae quivered as she detected the pheromone signatures of tracker units approaching from 3 directions. She had only moments before they would converge on her position. With no time left for hesitation, Kira scuttled toward the nearest vessel, a battered cargo hauler whose loading ramp stood open. She slipped inside just as the first trackers emerged. From the forest's edge, for better or worse, there would be no returning to the hive. Kira had become something new, something alone. The cargo hold reeked of synthetic lubricant and preserved protein, scents both alien and intriguing to Kira's sensitive antennae. She wedged herself between 2 large containers, her carapace scraping softly against the metal floor as she settled into the shadows. The ship hummed around her, its systems preparing for departure. Through a narrow gap between crates, she watched as a figure entered the hold, a human male with dark skin and close-cropped hair peppered with grey. He moved with the casual confidence of someone on familiar ground, tapping on a handheld device as he inventoried the cargo. Kira had seen humans through the collective memories, but never this close. The being's soft, furless skin fascinated her, as did the complex micro-expressions that rippled across his face. emotional cues too subtle for the hive mind to have bothered recording. The human paused, his head tilting slightly. Life sign. Where there shouldn't be one, he muttered, consulting his device again. And not on my manifest. His hand moved to the weapon holstered at his hip. Kira froze. Her species could remain motionless for days when necessary, a hunting adaptation rarely needed in their civilized present. She stilled even her breathing, becoming as one with the shadows. I know you're there, the human called, his voice echoing in the metallic space. The thermal scan doesn't lie. Come out now and we can talk about this like reasonable beings. Stay hidden and things get complicated. She remained still. Among the Aveni, disobeying a direct command from a superior was almost physically impossible. Yet, here she found herself doing exactly that, surprised by her own defiance. The human sighed, removing a small object from his pocket. Have it your way. He tossed the device into the air where it hovered, projecting a blue light that swept methodically through the cargo bay. The beam passed over Kira, and she felt a tingle across her carapace. Immediately, the drone zeroed in on her position, there. How you are, the human said, approaching her hiding spot with his weapon drawn but pointed downward, a posture that seemed cautious rather than threatening. Anavini, alone. Surprise colored his voice. Didn't think that was possible. Kira emerged slowly, her forelimbs raised in the universal gesture of non-aggression. This unit... She stopped, correcting herself. I request asylum. The human's eyebrows rose. You're speaking for yourself. I've dealt with your kind before. They always use we or refer to themselves by function designations. I am defective, Kira explained, the admission painful despite its truth. The connection to my sisters has faded. The Queen has ordered my recycling. Recycling? The human's face contorted in what Kira would later learn was disgust. They were going to kill you for being an individual? I am aberrant. My continued existence threatens hive stability. The human holstered his weapon and rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. My name's Mac, captain of this vessel, the Wanderer. He studied her with curious brown eyes. What should I call you? The question confused her. My designation is Worker Unit 7315, Nutrition Synthesis Division. That's not a name, that's an inventory code, Mac replied. What? Do you call yourself in your own thoughts? Kira's antennae twitched in confusion. The concept of a personal name had never occurred to her until that moment. Yet in the privacy of her thoughts, those treasonous, independent thoughts, she had begun thinking of herself by the identifying sound her hatchmates had used when they needed to single her out physically. Kira, she said softly, the sound strange on her mandibles when spoken aloud. I am Kira. Mac smiled, a gesture Kira recognized as positive from her limited knowledge of human expressions. Well, Kira, we're about to break atmosphere. The port authorities already cleared us for departure, so your sisters can't legally stop us now. He gestured toward a corridor. Come on, if you're leaving your hive behind, you should at least see what the stars look like up close. Outside, the lights of the starport began to fade as the ship's engines fired. Kira felt the vibrations through her legs, an oddly comforting sensation. Why would you help an aberrant? She asked as she followed Mac. The human glanced back at her, his expression unreadable to her inexperienced eyes. Let's just say I've got a soft spot for folks who don't fit in where they were born. The Wanderer's bridge was smaller than Kira had expected. Nothing like the vast command centers depicted in the educational modules that had been fed into the collective. 5 stations formed a semicircle around a central captain's chair, though only 2 were currently occupied. Everyone meet our stowaway, Mac announced as he entered with Kira, following cautiously behind. This is Kira. She's seeking asylum from her hive, a being with blue-tinted skin and gill-like structures along. Her neck spun in her chair. An Aveni alone? Her 3 eyes blinked in sequence. How fascinating. That's Tella, our xenobiologist and medic, Mac explained. The grumpy one pretending to ignore us is Ren, best pilot in 3 systems. The pilot, a stocky human with copper-colored hair pulled back in a tight knot, gave a dismissive grunt, without looking up from the navigation controls. Don't mind him, Tella said, approaching Kira with undisguised curiosity. He's like that with everyone at first. I've never observed an Aveni outside its collective consciousness. May I scan you? Non-invasive, I promise. Kira stepped back instinctively. In the hive, her body had never been her own. It belonged to the collective, to be used as needed for the greater good. Now, suddenly, she had the option to refuse. You can say no, Mac said quietly, noticing her hesitation. That's something you're allowed to do now. I would prefer not yet, Kira replied, the words feeling strange, expressing a personal preference rather than calculating optimal efficiency. Tella's disappointment showed briefly before she nodded. Of course, consent is fundamental. When you're comfortable, I'd be honored to learn more about your physiology. The concept of comfort was another novelty. In the hive, physical comfort was irrelevant except as it affected productivity. Emotional comfort didn't exist at all. The collective smoothed all individual distress into background noise, distributed and diminished across 10,000 minds. Here, Mac gestured to an empty seat. We're making the jump to FTL in about 10 minutes. First time's always memorable. Kira settled into the chair, her exoskeleton clicking slightly against the surface designed for softer anatomies. Through the main viewport, she could see the curve of her homeworld falling away. Azure plains and emerald forests shrinking into abstract patterns. Why did you leave? Tella asked, keeping a respectful distance. I understood Aveni couldn't. Survive psychologically outside the hive mind. I am damaged. The connection began failing 6 rotations ago. My sisters could not hear me clearly, nor I them. The Queen ordered my recycling. You're not damaged, Ren spoke suddenly, still focused on his controls. You're free. Mac nodded. Humans have a saying, one person's defect is another's distinction. What your hive sees as a flaw might be something valuable out here. Valuable how? Kira asked. I was bred for nutrition synthesis. Without access to hive resources, my skills are useless. You misunderstand, Tella interjected. Your value isn't in what you were programmed to do. It's in what you might choose. To do now that you're free to choose. The concept struck Kira like a physical blow. Choice, purpose beyond function. These were heretical ideas among the Aveni, whose entire civilization was built on perfect role adherence. I don't know how to choose, she admitted. I don't know how to be me. Mac smiled. Nobody does at first. We all figure it out as we go. The ship's systems chimed a warning, and Ren's fingers danced across his console. Prepare for translation. To FTL, and someone secure our guest of any physiology might not handle the transition well. Tella quickly showed Kira how to activate the seat's restraint field. The jump affects different species in different ways. Some feel nothing, others experience vivid hallucinations. 3, Ren counted down. 2, 1. The stars outside, stretched into lines, then blurred completely as reality seemed to fold around the ship. Kira felt a strange pressure in her mind, not unlike the hive connection but vastly emptier. For a moment panic gripped her. Then unexpectedly she felt something new, a sense of expansion as if her consciousness had room to grow for the first time. Without the constant background hum of 10,000 sisters, her thoughts seemed to echo in a vast private space. When reality reasserted itself, Kira found herself trembling, her compound eyes wide. You okay? Mac asked, concern evident in his voice. I am more than I was, Kira replied, struggling to articulate the transformation. There is room in my mind now, room to become. Tella smiled, her gill structures fluttering with excitement. That's the most beautiful definition of freedom I've ever heard. Try again, Ren instructed, his patience surprising given his initial gruffness. Remember, the point isn't to predict the right answer, but to have an opinion. Kira stared at the objects arranged on the mess hall table, 5 colored stones, of identical size and weight. The red one, she said finally, pointing to it with a forelimb. Why that one? Tella asked, leaning forward with interest. I'd like the color. The words felt strange in Kira's mouth. Preference without purpose was alien to Aveni thinking. In the hive, choices were made based on efficiency, resource optimization, and collective benefit, never on something as frivolous as aesthetic appeal. Good, Mac exclaimed, sounding genuinely pleased. That's progress. 2 cycles had passed since her escape. The Wanderer had traveled deeper into the neutral zone between Aveni space and the human-dominated systems of the Concordat. Kira had spent most of that time learning what it meant to be an individual, a concept so fundamental to humans, yet so revolutionary to her. In the hive, we never chose, she explained. The collective analyzed all variables and assigned optimal actions to each unit. Thinking independently feels what? Teller prompted when Kira trailed off. Frightening, wasteful, and, she hesitated, exhilarating. Ren actually smiled at that, the first time Kira had seen the expression on his weathered face. That's humanity's entire history in 3 words. Their lesson was interrupted by a sharp alarm from the bridge. Mac's communicator chirped, and the disembodied voice of Dex, the ship's security officer, filled the room. "Captain, we've got company. A Veni patrol vessel on an intercept course." Kira's antennae stiffened in fear. "They found me." "Impossible," Ren muttered, already moving toward the bridge. "We're way outside their territory." The crew assembled at their stations, Kira hovering uncertainly behind Mac's chair. On the main view screen, an Aveni enforcement vessel approached, its distinctive hexagonal segments glowing with the bioluminescent patterns that served as external indicators of the hive's collective mood. Currently, those patterns pulsed with the unmistakable rhythm of aggression. "They're hailing us," Dex reported from the communications station. A human with pale skin and elaborate markings inked across their exposed arms, they worked the controls with practiced precision. "Put them through," Mac ordered, straightening in his chair. The screen flickered, revealing an Aveni enforcement coordinator. Unlike the worker caste to which Kira belonged, the coordinator had more pronounced mandibles and a carapace reinforced with natural armor plates. Its compound eyes reflected the harsh lighting of the patrol ship's bridge. "Human vessel," the coordinator began, its voice a precise, emotionless drone. "You have illegally removed property of Hive Zalara. Return Aberrant Unit 7315 immediately." Mac's expression hardened. "There's no property aboard this ship, only passengers and crew." "The Aberrant Unit is not a person. It is a malfunctioning component of the Hive, scheduled for recycling and reintegration. Its genetic material is Zelaran intellectual property." Kira stepped forward, moving into view of the communication array despite Mac's warning gesture. "I chose to leave," she declared, her voice stronger than she expected. "I am not property." The coordinator's antennae twitched, the only indication of surprise in its otherwise impassive demeanor. "The aberrant speaks as an individual. The degradation is worse than projected." It turned its attention back to Mac. "Human, your species' fixation on individualism has corrupted Hive property. This transgression carries severe penalties." "Kira requested asylum," Mac replied calmly. "Under Concordat law, I'm obligated to bring her case before a neutral arbitrator. Aveni. Internal matters are not subject to Concordat interference. Prepare to be boarded. Resistance will be met with appropriate force." The screen went dark. Immediately, the bridge exploded into activity. "They're powering weapons," Dex reported, fingers flying across their console. "Evasive pattern Delta," Mac ordered. "Ren, get us out of here." The pilot needed no further instruction. The Wanderer banked sharply, accelerating away from the much larger Aveni vessel. "They're launching interceptors," Dex warned. 3 small craft, armed and closing fast. Kira's mind raced. She had never imagined the Hive would extend such resources to recover a single aberrant worker. "They shouldn't care this much about one defective unit," she said, confusion evident in her voice. Teller, who had been analyzing the patrol ship's configuration, looked up sharply. "Unless you're not defective at all, unless you're something they fear." "What do you mean?" Kira asked. "Evolution," Teller replied. "What if your disconnection isn't a malfunction but adaptation, a natural next step?" A weapons blast from the lead interceptor struck the Wanderer's shields, making the ship shudder. "Philosophical discussion later," Mac said grimly. "Survival now. Ren, find us somewhere to hide." The pilot grinned, the expression almost predatory. "Already plotted, Captain. Hold tight." The stars outside blurred as the Wanderer accelerated to maximum sublight speed. racing toward a dense asteroid field that floated like scattered teeth against the backdrop of space. The Wanderer darted between massive hunks of rock and ice, its maneuvering thrusters firing in controlled bursts as Ren guided the ship deeper into the asteroid field. Behind them, the Aveni interceptors followed, their sleek forms struggling, with the chaotic navigation that seemed to come naturally to the human pilot. "Their ships are biomechanical," Kira explained, watching the tactical display over Dex's shoulder. "Partially alive and connected to the pilot's minds through the hive consciousness. They think too uniformly to adapt quickly to unpredictable environments." Mac nodded. "That's our advantage then, Ren. Make this as random as you can." "Random is my specialty, Captain," the pilot replied, executing a stomach-churning roll between two slowly tumbling asteroids that left barely a meter of clearance on either side. From the weapons station, Volk, a barrel-chested human with a shock of white hair, tracked the pursuers. "Lead interceptor is taking damage from debris. Their formation is breaking up." Kira felt an unexpected emotion watching the Aveni ship struggle, a mixture of pride in her new companions and something darker that took her a moment to identify, satisfaction in her former oppressor's frustration. The feeling disturbed her. In the hive, taking pleasure in another's difficulty was incomprehensible. All successes and failures belonged to the collective. "We can't stay here forever," Teller observed. "Eventually they'll call for reinforcements that can surround the entire field." "We need to disable them before that happens," Mac agreed. He turned to Kira. "Any weaknesses we can exploit?" Kira hesitated. What they were asking for was betrayal of her species, yet these humans had risked their lives for her freedom. The interceptors rely on pheromone-based internal communication. Their sensor arrays are designed to filter out chemical noise. Her forelimbs gestured toward the ship's systems. "If you could disperse particulates with a similar molecular structure to Aveni command pheromones, it might disrupt their coordination." Taylor immediately grasped the implications. "I could synthesize something close enough from our organic compound stores." "Do it," Mac ordered. "Volk, prepare to deploy via the external ventilation system once Teller has the compound ready." As the crew sprang into action, the ship shuddered from a glancing hit. One of the interceptors had managed a lucky shot despite the asteroid interference. "Shields at 83%, Dex reported. "They're adapting faster than expected." Kira's antennae twitched nervously. "The Queen must be directly linked to the pursuit team. She's feeding them enhanced processing power." "The Queen herself is coordinating this?" Mac asked, surprise evident in his voice. "For one worker?" "It doesn't make sense," Kira agreed. "Unless—" A terrible possibility formed in her mind. "Unless I'm not the only one. If others are developing independence, I represent proof that the aberration can escape control." The implications hung heavily in the air. For a species entirely built around collective consciousness, the emergence of true individuals posed an existential threat. Teller's voice came through the communication system. "Compound ready, sending the molecular structure to Dex for targeting calibration." Moments later, Volk announced, "Dispersal system online and aimed. Ready on your command, Captain." Mac studied the tactical display where the three interceptors were regrouping for another attack run. "Wait for them to commit to their approach, but now!" A fine mist ejected from the Wanderer's external vents, spreading through the vacuum in an invisible cloud. The interceptors flew directly into it, their organic components automatically processing the chemical signatures. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The formation dissolved as the three ships veered in different directions, their movements suddenly erratic. "It's working," Dex exclaimed. "Their coordination is completely disrupted." "Not for long," Kira warned. "The hive will analyze the compound and adapt." "Long enough," Ren replied, his fingers dancing across the navigation controls. "Plotting a course out of the field. We can make the jump to FTL in 30 seconds once we clear the gravitational interference." As the Wanderer emerged from the asteroid field, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, preparing for the jump that would carry them beyond the Aveni patrol's reach. Through the view screen, Kira watched as the interceptors struggled to regroup, their movements still uncoordinated. 10 seconds to jump capability, Ren announced. Mac turned to Kira. "Last chance if you want to go back. Once we jump, there's..." No returning to your hive. The question startled her. After everything that had happened, the idea that she might choose to return had never occurred to her. Yet Mac had offered the choice anyway, not assuming, not deciding for her. In that moment, Kira understood something fundamental about humans that the Aveni Collective had never grasped. True strength came not from perfect coordination, but from respecting the autonomy of each individual. "I choose freedom," she said firmly. "I choose you." Mac smiled and nodded to Ren. "Get us out of here." The stars stretched into lines as the Wanderer leapt into FTL, leaving Aveni space and everything Kira had ever known behind. "It's not just a mutation," Teller explained, her three eyes bright with excitement as she displayed the results of Kira's genetic analysis on the laboratory's main screen. "It's a dormant evolutionary pathway, artificially suppressed." 2 weeks had passed since their escape from the Aveni patrol. The Wanderer had traveled to the fringes of Concordat space, docking at a remote research station where Teller had connections among the scientific community. With access to advanced equipment, the xenobiologist had finally convinced Kira to allow a comprehensive analysis of her biology. Mac frowned, studying the complex molecular diagrams. "You're saying someone engineered the Aveni to be dependent on the hive mind?" "Not exactly," Teller corrected. "The capacity for individual consciousness appears to be natural to Aveni physiology. What's artificial is the suppression mechanism that maintains hive dependency." Kira stared at the display, trying to comprehend the implications. "Our entire civilization is built on collective consciousness. Our architecture, technology, reproduction, everything assumes connection to the hive. A connection enforced through epigenetic manipulation," Teller continued. "Your particular genetic variance makes you resistant to the suppression factors. As you matured, your natural neural patterns began to assert themselves." "So I'm not defective," Kira said slowly. "I'm what Aveni would naturally be without interference." "Precisely." Teller's gill structures fluttered with enthusiasm. "And you're almost certainly not alone. Statistically, others with your genetic profile must exist throughout Aveni populations." Ren, who had been silently observing from the doorway, finally spoke. "Others who are being recycled when they start showing independence." The realization hit Kira like a physical blow. All those sisters who had disappeared over the years, labeled as defective, their bodies broken down and reabsorbed by the hive. How many had been like her? How many potential individuals had been sacrificed to maintain the collective stranglehold? "We have to help them," she said, her decision immediate and unwavering. "If others are developing independence, they'll face the same death sentence I escaped." Mac's expression turned serious. "You're talking about going back to Aveni space, after we just barely escaped with our lives." "Not just Aveni space," Kira clarified, her resolve strengthening. "Back to Hive Zilara itself." The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Finally, Dex, who had been analyzing security protocols on a separate terminal, looked up. "It's not impossible," they said thoughtfully. "The hive security is designed to keep outsiders out, not insiders in. With Kira's knowledge of internal systems and our technology, we might find a way." "It would be incredibly dangerous," Mac warned, "for all of us." "Yes," Kira agreed, "but you taught me that freedom requires courage, that individuals have responsibility not just to themselves but to others." She gestured with her forelimbs in a human-like shrug she had unconsciously adopted. "Isn't that what your species calls morality?" A slow smile spread across Mac's face. "Using our own values against us. You're learning too well." Teller had already begun pulling up schematics of Aveni hive structures. If others with Kira's condition exist, they'd be in the medical isolation sectors. The hive would quarantine them during the transition phase before recycling. "I know where those chambers are located," Kira confirmed, "but getting inside the hive undetected would be nearly impossible for humans." "Not if they don't look human," Folk suggested, joining the conversation. The weapons specialist tapped his console, bringing up designs for environmental suits. "We've got metamaterial technology that can approximate Aveni worker carapaces. With proper pheromone synthesizers, we might pass casual inspection, and We'd have a genuine Aveni guide, Dex added, nodding toward Kira. Mac paced the small laboratory, considering the proposal from all angles. Even if we succeed, what then? Where would we take these freed Aveni? They can't all join our crew. There's a research outpost in the Lyra sector, Teller suggested, run by an old colleague who studies emergent consciousness patterns. They've been documenting cases of spontaneous individuation across multiple hive species. A sanctuary, Kira said, the word feeling right. A place where my kind can learn to be individuals, as I am learning. Wren, typically the most cautious, among them surprised everyone by saying, I know a few transport captains who owe me favors. If we can get your people out, we can arrange discreet passage to Lyra. Mac looked around at his crew, at the determination in their eyes, the willingness to risk everything for beings they had never met. It was the essence of humanity that Kira found most bewildering and most admirable, the capacity to extend compassion beyond rational self-interest. Well then, the captain said finally, looks like we're planning a jailbreak. Dex, get us navigational data on approach vectors that minimize Aveni patrol contact. Teller, I need those pheromone synthesizers perfected. Volk, work on the disguise. Suits, he turned to Kira, and you need to teach us everything about moving through a hive without attracting attention. As the crew dispersed to their tasks, Kira felt a surge of emotion, unlike anything she had experienced in the collective, a mixture of fear, hope, and something else she was still learning to identify. Purpose. Not purpose assigned by the hive, but purpose she had chosen for herself. The recycling chambers of Hive Zalara were never meant to be seen by outsiders. Located deep within the hive's central spire, the vast circular room thrummed with the sound of processing machinery. Along the walls, transparent pods held Aveni, in various stages of sedation. Workers, drones, and even specialized cast members whose usefulness to the collective had ended, or those who, like Kira, had begun to develop independence. 23 pods, Folk whispered through the communication system built into their disguise suits. 11 appear to contain subjects still showing vital signs. Hurry, Kira urged, her real antennae twitching nervously beneath the synthetic carapace overlay that completed her disguise. Unlike the humans, she needed only minimal coverings to alter her worker caste markings to those of a medical technician. The chamber supervisors will make their inspection soon. The infiltration had proceeded more smoothly than any of them had dared hope. With Kira's guidance, they had entered through a rarely used maintenance tunnel, timing their movements between the regular pheromone sweeps that the hive used to detect unauthorized presences. Mac moved to the central control terminal, his movements awkward in the articulated suit designed to mimic Aveni physiology. Dex were at the main system. Work your magic. Through their earpieces, Dex's voice came through clearly from the Wanderer, which orbited above in a sensor-shielded position. Connecting now, their security is sophisticated but predictable, exactly as Kira described. Teller and Wren began, moving among the pods, checking life signs and applying emergency medical patches Teller had developed, designed to counteract the sedatives keeping the aberrants docile. This one's already gone, Teller reported sadly, moving past a pod where the occupant's carapace had begun to be dissolved by recycling enzymes. But these others still have strong neural activity. They're fighting the sedation. Kira moved to one of the pods containing a young worker, her heart aching at the sight. The worker's antennae twitched erratically, a sign of distress and confusion, common to those experiencing disconnection from the hive mind. This one is like I was, aware enough to be terrified, not understanding what's happening. The pod release mechanism is synthetic, not biological, Mac observed, studying the controls. That's good news. Dex can override it without triggering a biological alert response. Through their comms, Dex's voice was tense with concentration. Working on it now. Their systems recognize me as a legitimate user, but I need administrative privileges to initiate a mass release. Could we do them one at a time? Wren asked, keeping watch near the chamber's entrance. Too slow, Kira replied, and each opening would register individually in the system. We need to release them simultaneously to have any chance of getting them out before the hive responds. Suddenly the lights in the chamber shifted from their steady blue glow to a pulsing amber. A low vibration ran through the floor, so subtle that only Kira's sensitive feet detected it. "We've been discovered," she whispered urgently. "That vibration is an alert signal transmitted through the hive structure itself. Dex?" Mac's voice remained remarkably calm. "Almost there," the security officer responded. "Just need 30 more seconds." "We may not have 30 seconds," Volk warned, his disguised form moving to a defensive position near the entrance. From his suit, he produced a device barely larger than his palm. "Electromagnetic pulse. Short range, but it might buy us time." Mac hesitated. "It'll affect our suits, too." "The comms and pheromone synthesizers will fail," Kira agreed. "But the artificial exoskeletons should still provide visual." Camouflage. The chamber's massive door began to slide open. Through the widening gap, the distinctive forms of enforcement units became visible, larger than workers, with reinforced front limbs evolved for combat. "No choice," Mac decided. "Volk, do it." The weapons specialist activated the device. A wave of invisible energy rippled outward, causing the chamber's electronics to flicker momentarily. The enforcement unit staggered, their partially technological enhancements temporarily disrupted. In the same moment, the pods hissed open, their transparent covers retracting simultaneously. 11 Aveni of various castes lay exposed, their limbs twitching as they began to regain consciousness. "The pulse worked," Teller announced, checking her medical scanner. "Their sedation system is offline." Kira moved quickly between the pods, touching her antennae to each awakening Aveni in turn. "Sisters," she chittered in the direct contact language rarely used in the hive. "We're here to help you. You're not defective. You're evolving." The confused Aveni looked at her with varying degrees of comprehension. Some were too disoriented to respond, while others managed weak movements of acknowledgement. "The enforcement units are recovering," Wren warned, "and I'm picking up more approaching from adjacent chambers." Mac surveyed the situation rapidly. "We can't carry all of them. Those that can move need to help those who can't." Kira organized the stronger Aveni, speaking in quick, direct instructions that bypassed the need for hive communication. 3. Workers had regained enough strength to stand, and together they helped lift their weaker companions. "This way," Kira directed, pointing toward a secondary passage Volk had identified during their planning. "It connects to the waste processing system. The sensory apparatus there is minimal, designed to ignore worker movements." As they began their awkward exodus, the first wave of enforcement units entered the chamber. Without communication, the EMB units were operating on base programming, attacking any unauthorized presence. One leapt toward Teller, who was supporting a barely conscious engineer cast Aveni. Mac intercepted the enforcer, using his suit's strength enhancements to grapple with the larger being. "Go!" he shouted to the others. "Get them to the ship!" "Not without you," Kira insisted, helping Wren guide the last of the rescued Aveni toward the escape route. Volk had engaged 2 more enforcers, his combat training evident even within the constraints of the awkward suit. "Captain, I can hold them." "Take the package and go." "Nobody gets left behind," Mac grunted, twisting to avoid the enforcer's powerful mandibles. With a sudden move, he slammed the creature against the wall, stunning it momentarily. More enforcers poured through the main entrance. Without the coordinating intelligence of the hive, they attacked indiscriminately, some even turning on each other in the confusion. Teller had reached the secondary passage with most of the rescued Aveni. "The pathway is clear. We need to move now before they organize." Kira made a decision. Rushing to the central terminal, she placed her forelegs on the biological interface panel, a direct connection to the hive's communication system. The pain was immediate and overwhelming as the collective consciousness sought to reabsorb her, to erase her individuality. But she no longer belonged to them. With all the mental strength she had developed during her time with the humans, she pushed back, sending a powerful surge of chaotic thoughts into the system. The effect was electric. Throughout the chamber, the enforcement units froze, overwhelmed by the informational storm Kira had unleashed. Their coordination completely disrupted. They milled about in confusion. "What did you do?" Mac asked, breaking free from his opponent, and rushing to Kira's side. Introduce doubt, she gasped, her mind reeling from the effort. A concept they have no defense against. It won't last long. Folk grabbed her as her legs buckled. Time to go, philosopher. Your revolution started. Together they retreated into the secondary passage, Mac sealing it behind them with explosive charges that would slow any pursuit. Ahead, Tella and Wren guided the rescued Avani through the dimly lit maintenance tunnels that would lead them to the surface, and freedom. The medical bay of the Wanderer hummed with activity as Tella moved among the 11 rescued Avani, checking vital signs and administering supplements designed to ease their transition to individual consciousness. Some lay in quiet meditation. Others chittered softly among themselves, practicing direct communication without the hive mind. Kira watched from the doorway, her antennae periodically twitching with sympathetic stress. Each of the freed Avani was experiencing what she had endured alone, the terrifying expansion of self, the loss of constant connection, the bewildering freedom of independent thought. At least they had each other, and her. They're stabilizing well, Tella reported, joining Kira at the observation window. 3 have already begun forming coherent identities. The others will follow as the last of the suppression chemicals leave their systems. And Mac? Kira asked hesitantly. Tella's expression softened. Still in surgery. The Enforcer's attack caused significant damage, but Wren's got steady hands. He'll pull through. During their escape from the hive, a partially recovered enforcement unit had ambushed them near the surface exit. Mac had placed himself between the creature and Kira, taking the full force of its attack. The injuries had been severe, multiple lacerations and a punctured lung from the Enforcer's barbed limbs. He shouldn't have done that, Kira said quietly. My exoskeleton would have provided better protection than his soft tissues. That's not how he thinks, Tella replied. Not how any human thinks, really. Irrationally, the xenobiologist smiled. Compassionately. Humans evolved as social creatures, but not like the Avani. Our strength comes from collective action by choice, not biological imperative. The ship shuddered slightly as it translated back into normal space after their latest jump. They had made 3 rapid FTL hops since escaping Avani territory, following a randomized course to shake any potential pursuit. Dax's voice came through the ship-wide communication system. We've arrived at the rendezvous coordinates. Transport vessels are standing by to take our passengers to the sanctuary. Kira felt an unexpected pang at the announcement. Soon, her rescued sisters would depart for the research station in the Lyra sector, where they would learn to embrace their individuality under the guidance of specialists. The logical choice would be for her to join them, to help them navigate the confusion she had already mastered. Yet something held her back. She made her way to the surgical bay, where Wren was completing the final tissue regeneration treatment on Mac's unconscious form. The pilot acknowledged her with a nod. He'll wake up cursing in about 20 minutes, Wren said, his gruff manner unable to completely hide his relief. Stubborn fool refused to die, said something about having unfinished business. When Wren departed to help coordinate the transfer of the rescued Avani, Kira remained by Mac's bedside, studying his alien features with newfound appreciation. The lines on his face, the scars on his hands, each mark told a story of choice and consequence. In the hive, physical individuality was meaningless. Here, among humans, it was everything. Mac's eyes flickered open earlier than expected. Did we get them all out? He asked, his voice raspy from the breathing tube recently removed. All 11 alive, Kira confirmed. They're transferring to the sanctuary vessels soon. He tried to sit up, wincing at the movement. You'll be going. With them, I assume. The question hung in the air between them. Kira's forelimbs moved in the human gesture of uncertainty she had adopted. That would be the logical choice. Logic, Mac scoffed weakly. Most overrated human invention. Right after tax collection. Kira tilted her head. You don't want me to go. What I want doesn't matter, he replied. That's the whole point of what we did. You choose your path now, not me, not your hive, not anyone else. The concept still dizzied her. The weight of true choice, the responsibility of self-determination. In the collective, purpose was assigned from birth. Among individuals, it had to be discovered, created, sometimes painfully extracted from the chaos of possibility. "What if I choose to stay?" she asked finally. "I could serve as a liaison for future rescue operations. My knowledge of Aveni systems and biology would be valuable." Mac's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Is that what you want, or what you think?" "Would be most useful." The question struck her like a physical blow. Even now, she defaulted to justifying her desires in terms of utility, the hive's values still embedded in her thinking. "I want," she began, then stopped, reformulating. "I choose to stay because here, with you and this crew, I feel most like myself. The self I am becoming, not the self I was programmed to be." A smile spread across Mac's face. "That's the most human thing I've ever heard you say." Later, as the Wanderer hung in space beside the 3 transport vessels, Kira addressed her freed sisters one final time before their departure. They gathered in the cargo bay, their postures showing varying degrees of confidence in their newly independent bodies. "The path ahead will not be easy," she told them, speaking without the chemical signals that would normally accompany Aveni communication. "You will question yourselves. You will make mistakes. You will feel alone, even when surrounded by others. But you will also discover joy that belongs to you alone, pride in achievements that are truly yours, and connections formed by choice rather than biology." One of the younger workers stepped forward. "Will we see you again?" "Yes," Kira promised. "The Wanderer will visit the sanctuary regularly. Captain Mac has agreed to establish a permanent rescue network. What happened to us is happening to others throughout Aveni space." "A revolution," said another, an engineer whose technical knowledge would prove invaluable in future operations. "An evolution," Kira corrected, one mind at a time. As the last of her sisters boarded the transport vessels, Kira felt Mac's presence beside her. He had insisted on leaving the medical bay despite Teller's objections, supporting himself with a cane fashioned from spare parts. "So you know the Queen won't stop hunting us," he said quietly. "Once she realizes what we've done, what it means for the hive structure." "Let her come," Kira replied with newfound confidence. "The hive's strength has always been in numbers acting as one. But we have something stronger." "What's that?" "Numbers acting as many. Minds approaching problems from different angles, individuals cooperating by choice." She turned to face him directly. "Isn't that the true strength of humanity? Not that you stand alone, but that you choose to stand together despite having the freedom not to." Mac's weathered face creased in thought. "Never considered it that way. We're so used to our squabbles and divisions that we forget what makes them possible is also what makes us strong." Through the viewport, they watched as the transport ships activated their engines, carrying their precious cargo of awakening minds toward a new future. Not a perfect hive of identical thoughts, nor isolated individuals pursuing selfish aims, but something humanity had spent millennia struggling to perfect, a community of distinct voices finding harmony without sacrificing uniqueness. "Where? To next, Captain?" Kira asked as the last transport disappeared into FTL. Mac's smile held both mischief and determination. "Heard rumors about a Masati drone collective experiencing unexplained individuations in the Cygnus arm. Probably nothing to it." "Probably," Kira agreed, her antennae twitching with anticipation. "But we should investigate anyway." As the Wanderers' engines powered up, Kira took her place on the bridge beside her human companions. No longer a refugee, but a crew member. No longer an aberration, but a pioneer. The stars stretched before them, each one a possibility in a universe where being different was not a defect but the greatest gift of all.